I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Football Show. It is a hell of a day to talk ball, and joining me to do just that is Scott Pianowski. Scott, another pretty wild Sunday of the NFL season. What's going on, buddy?
It was a wild Sunday. I thought it was a better week than last week, which was defined by no scoring and a bunch of players getting hurt. I know we had to navigate through 6 bye weeks. We got through it. There were some backfields that maybe didn't go the way we wanted, but the Sunday night game, I was hoping it would be a palate cleanser, and not everybody got home. We have a lot to talk about, but at least Jalen Hurts is doing Jalen Hurts things, and A.J. Brown is doing A.J. Brown things, and Tyreek Hill is doing Tyreek Hill things. So, you roster those guys, all is good with the world.
Yeah, definitely some performances by the superstars we know and love, but no Sunday is perfect. There's always something that's bothering you coming out of a Sunday slate. And I mean, literally, how could any Sunday be bother free? That would be absolutely impossible. And that is why, what we do here, Scott and I, we just kind of shoot from the hip. We're reacting in the moment. It's all happening in real time. But if you really need some zen, some come down, that's why the People's Panic Meter exists, the episode that comes out on Tuesday with Andy Behrens. Again, we try to be a little more, we've taken some time to digest the whole thing. I imagine that there is going to be a ton of panic, especially around a certain Falcons running back, and maybe some anger targeted at a certain Falcons coach. We'll talk about that later on this show. But if you really want to air your feelings, what you got to do is you got to hit up fantasymailbag@yahoosports.com. It can be about that player that I'm referencing. It could be about anything you want, anything that's got you panicked coming out of week 7. Send a voice memo, a video, a written email to fantasymailbag@yahoosports.com, and Andy Behrens and I will discuss it on the Tuesday podcast. But for now, yes, Scott, let's get into Sunday Night Football. Eagles 31, Dolphins 17. We got some bright performances from some superstars. You mentioned Tyreek Hill. Obviously, I mean, A.J. Brown, dude, is just on a complete tear right now, but not everything went to plan. What stood out to you in this one?
Yeah, you teed up the panic meter, and I wonder how people are handling Jalen Waddle and handling Devonta Smith. Waddle was dinged up in this game. He missed some time, came back. They both had okay games. They certainly came in a little bit under expectation, but the problem, and I've been fielding a lot of questions on these guys. I'm saying, I don't sit Devonta Smith. I don't sit Jalen Waddle. But A.J. Brown and Tyreek Hill are generational talents. All right. I mean, Waddle and Devonta Smith, I'm not here to do a Alabama smear campaign. They were first-round picks. They're very good players. On several teams, they would be the alpha. They would be the target hog. You look at this game, Brown, 15 targets, Tyreek Hill, 15 targets. And you can't, given the results, now the Eagles are probably happy to keep Tyreek Hill under 100 yards. He caught a lot of short balls tonight, but I can't blame the Eagles for throwing the ball to A.J. Brown all the time. I wish the Titans had done this a million years ago. I wish Patriots had drafted A.J. Brown instead of N'Keal Harry. It's always going to bother me. But maybe the gap is just, and look, at some point, Jalen Waddle is too good to not have like 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. At some point, Devonta Smith's going to run by somebody, and Hurts is going to hit him. And these are good players, but I think we have to have a discussion of what exactly is the gap here, because you can't blame the Eagles and the Dolphins for peppering their 2 alpha targets off the bus. And I thought, look, everybody had Hill and Brown ranked higher than their teammates. I get it, but I didn't think the gap was going to be quite this large. And yet, what Hill had, he was 1,800, 1,900 yards last year. When you watch A.J. Brown play football, you wonder how he can be covered, because he's just so tall, and he high points the ball, and he's fast, and he's physical. I don't know what you do to stop A.J. Brown. Long way of saying, Matt, I think we need to give these people some words of wisdom. And I know you and Andy will probably follow up on it on Tuesday, but what's the State of the Union address for Waddle and Smith managers?
This is actually something we talked about last week, right? Where it's been a really tough year for the 1B or secondary receiver, and any hope that there could be, I mean, God forbid, like a flippening, right? Like any sort of taking over of, and there were people ready to make that argument about Devonta Smith. Like if you look at his target totals from week 2, you erase that week 1 game against the Lions from 2022. You look at from week 2 all the way through the playoffs, like it was pretty even, right? That hasn't even come close. If anything, there's just been that further pulling away by A.J. Brown, a further pulling away by Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Obviously, they're on a bye this week, but that has been in full effect. And really, Scott, like I said, we talked about that last week, and I pointed this out on Friday after Calvin Ridley's, disappointing performance, to say the least, on Thursday Night Football from a stats perspective, and Chris Olave kind of having a whatever game that, his performative quarterback was screaming at him over and over again. But, give me a break, Derek Carr. I made the point that, hey, are you unhappy with the wide receiver you took in rounds 2 to 3 of your fantasy football draft? Guess what? Everybody is. Like those guys that went around the turn, from picks 23 to 34 in consensus ADP, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, Devontae Smith, T. Higgins, Calvin Ridley, DK Metcalf. Metcalf obviously doesn't play today with a couple of injuries as well. So a lot of those guys there, I think if you take out, I guess, Metcalf and definitely Chris Olave, Jalen Waddle, second receiver on his team. Devonta Smith, second receiver on his team. T. Higgins, second receiver on his team. Calvin Ridley is the second receiver on his team. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. So I'm kind of at a point where I'm not viewing these guys as like, they're great players, but like any sort of like decline in the situation to me. And I think any sort of change in the situation to me creates more chaos for these players than it does for the alpha target, right? I don't think Jalen Hurts has had his best performances to start this season. He was rocky a couple of times tonight. He's been rocky all season. The Dolphins, it didn't show up today. They couldn't run the ball, but usually they've been a really good rushing team. And Waddle had 6 catches for 63 yards, and he missed some time with an injury, so maybe he has a different performance if he's on the field the whole time. But that change in that ecosystem has caused some of the juice to get shaved off of Waddle's production. T. Higgins, obviously, there's been chaos over there. So I think that is a lesson I'm learning right now, that these guys, like when we push them up this far into this high up the fantasy rankings, we're baking in a lot of ceiling projection and not a lot of floor projection. And floor projections can come for anybody with just a few ticks in the NFL.
I suppose it's the last time we're ever going to see A.J. Brown slide past the first round. He was a second round pick in a lot of leagues. 125 or more yards in 5 straight games. He's only the 3rd player to do that. Calvin Johnson is also on that list. So even in an era where it's never been easier to throw the ball, he's separating himself. I want to ask you an aesthetic question. I don't know if we've ever talked about this, and we don't have to talk about long, but where do you stand on this whole Jalen Hurts short yardage? Nick Sirianni and the Eagles put the game away with a couple of 4th down conversions on a mid-4th quarter drive, just really breaking the back of Miami. It's hard enough to stop the Eagles, but as Mina Kimes pointed out on Twitter, it's like you have to stop. You have to hold them at like 7 or 8 yards. If they get 8.5 or 9 yards, they're just going to go for it in 4th down, and it feels like a fait accompli. You can't stop them. I've heard different opinions on how safe it is. There's some people say, well, it's a rugby play. And the Eagles are, hey, we run it better than everybody else. If everybody else could do it as well as we do, they do it too. Where does Matt Harmon come down on this whole brotherly shove, tush push, Jalen Hurts, the Eagles? Where do you stand on it?
Yeah, for one, I'm team tush push in terms of the name. I like tush push better. It was the original nickname. We should stick with the original nickname. Also, there's been other teams that have done stuff like this before, not in the NFL, but like in college football. So any good idea in football was stolen from somewhere.
For and sure. Copycat league.
Yeah, it's a copycat sport, right? Like there's a lot of stuff going on in the NFL right now that has been farmed from the lower levels, Sure. So I'm not saying that the Eagles invented this play, which is why I think tush push is a better nickname. That's my stance on that. Overall, I'm in favor of keeping the play. I'm totally buying into the argument that, look, if it was so easy, if it was so just a cheat code, everybody else would do it, and nobody else has a quarterback that is A, capable of doing the play, and 2, willing to do the play. There's a lot of quarterbacks that are just not going to do that sneak, right? Even for guys that are physical beasts at the position, like Daniel Jones can be a physical beast as a rushing quarterback at the position sometimes. He is not squatting 600 pounds like Jalen Hurts, and he is not, moving the pile in that way. And not every center probably wants to, lay out, and as Chris Collinsworth pointed out tonight, have like 300 plus pounds laying on his back every single time they do this, like Jason Kelsey does. So generally, I'm in favor of keeping the play. And if you have Jalen Hurts on your fantasy teams, and maybe I have Jalen Hurts on some fantasy teams, so maybe that's why I'm saying this. But it really has kind of put deodorant, to use one of your phrases, a little bit of like deodorant on Jalen Hurts as a rusher this year, because I don't think he's looked that great, maybe as explosive as a rusher, but you would never know it based on some of these tush-push situations.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you that in every one of your fantasy leagues, we're going to throw all the quarterbacks back in a pool, and I'm going to give you, Matt Harmon, your choice of quarterback. No cost. You just you want the guy. You get him the rest of the season. You want Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson was great today. Who are you going with?
I think I'm still going with Hurts because, like I said, I think this offense has been so. It's been. I wouldn't say this offense has been perfect, but Jalen Hurts has still been awesome in fantasy. So mostly because of the tush push thing that we just talked about. But what if eventually Jalen Hurts catches fire? What if Devonta Smith starts turning in big games consistently? What if like Brown, Goddard, and Smith are popping off all in the same game? Like, I still think there's so much ceiling case for Jalen Hurts in fantasy that I'll still go with him at the top of the draft.
Yeah, I would go with Hurts too, with the caveat that I'm not crazy about some of the defenses on their schedule. There's a Jets game.
That's
true. I'm sorry, they already played the Jets. They lost to the Jets. They don't get Miami's schedule. But there's a Cowboys game, there's a Bills game, there's a Chiefs game, 49ers game. Actually, both of their Cowboys games are to come. So there are some tricky games on the schedule. But Hurts has that combination of really good offensive ecosystem. He's at any point he can throw a pass to Brown, he can house it. Eventually, Smith's going to be heard from. Dallas Goedert has come into relevance lately, and I don't think we mentioned it in the other part of the show, but it was National Tight End Week, so I don't know why. I don't know why that's a thing, but I guess it's a thing. And Dallas
they all showed. Basically, all of them showed up for it. Like Darren Waller had a big game. Travis Kelce had the biggest game. A lot of tight ends had big games. So hey, if for a murky position, if this fake holiday is going to work out for us fantasy folks, we got to take it.
Well, if Michael Mayer can't outproduce Austin Hooper, I just throw the whole thing into I want to recount on the whole idea, but no, I would go with Hurts too, because he's got that great infrastructure. Plus, his odds of scoring a touchdown in any week are so freaking high. And I want to point out one other thing about the Eagles' schedule. They play the Washington Commanders next week. What's the sack over on? I mean, they're going to sack Sam Howell like 17 times. This is Reggie White is going to come back, come back to life and have 5 sacks in this game. It's just, oh man, bad things for the Commanders. Anything unusual? Anything about Miami? I feel like we haven't talked about them too much. Do you have a quick takeaway on them?
Yes, that was going to be where I closed it here. You mentioned the Dolphins schedule. I'm looking at the Dolphins schedule right now and just the teams they've played so far this year. And look, I think the Dolphins are a damn good team, and I think their offense rocks for the most part, okay? But this is a pretty disappointing performance, right? One of their scores, 17 points, comes from Jalen Hurts' pick 6. Otherwise, they score 10 points on offense. Tyreek Hill, he has 88 yards on 10 catches. You mentioned that. Like, it wasn't quite the potent outing. The run game completely disappeared. The Eagles have a good front line. They're generally a really good run defense, so that's not a total surprise that the run game gets shut down. But you just look at their 2 losses, right? This Eagles team that can really get after you on defense. The other one, week 4, Buffalo, they scored 20 points. The Bills at that time were a good defense. I don't know that they're a good defense anymore because of all the injuries that they had, but that was when, like, all right, Matt Milano shut the middle of the field down. All those guys, they did that, and they took something away from Miami, and they couldn't quite punch back. In this game, the run game gets taken away. They couldn't quite punch back. Look, week 1, they destroy a bad Chargers defense, 36 points. Denver, obviously, they embarrass Sean Payton off the face of the earth. In week 3, they score 70 points. In week 2, 24 points, 24-17 against the Patriots defense. It's pretty good. They obviously then destroy the Giants. They destroy the Panthers. They're a bad team killer. They're going to embarrass bad teams like they're, week 0 of college football or whatever, week 1 of college football. I don't know. But do we have any concerns about the Dolphins against these teams that are, among the better in the NFL? Not saying that they can't hang, but, they get the Patriots again next week. They get the Chiefs, who are a good defense in Germany, the week before the bye. Then they come back to the Raiders. Cool, soft landing spot. Jets are in there twice. Dallas is in there week 16. The Ravens in week 17. Are you concerned or diminishing expectations for the Dolphins against these better defenses?
Somewhat. That's going to be the question, right? They're bullies. They're beating up on the weaker opposition. And look, that's something you have to do. When you are presented a team you're heavily favored against, you're supposed to beat them. And we know that doesn't always happen. The Bills lost to the Patriots today. The 49ers lost to the Browns a week ago with a backup quarterback. So you're not handed free wins. And when you throw up 40 points or 50 points or, God forbid, 70 points, that means something. But with those two Jets games looming, a junkyard team nobody likes to play. You mentioned the Cowboys. Producer Colin knows all about them. What a great defense they are, even though they've lost some personnel. Look, everybody's lost some personnel. We're in the middle of October, for crying out loud. But the Chiefs, very quietly, the Chiefs have assembled a good defense. So the questions, Mike McDaniel is going to be fielding this question of, okay, you've had basically two big show-me games, and you haven't shown up for either one of those games. The Bills beat you easily, and they haven't done anything right since then, it feels like.
That's true.
And then tonight, it's just always felt like a game that Philadelphia was in control of. I know at one point it was 17-17, but it felt like the Eagles were certainly the right side, and this is somebody who picked Miami, so I feel a little sheepish about that. But the good news is there's no way to stop Tyreek Hill. I mean, Philadelphia did about as good of a job as you could. It didn't happen, and they're going to get Chan back, not that far down the road. Jeff Wilson hardly played tonight, but he'll add something. Raheem Mostert is still somebody, as long as he's healthy, we're still going to play him. Maybe it's just a case of Miami's a good team and not yet a great team.
I think that's very possible. They will get some guys back like Jalen Ramsey on defense. They will get Achane back. You mentioned that. So there are reinforcements coming for Miami, but I think you summed it up perfectly, Scott, that in two statement games for them, they've been on the wrong side of the statement. And we'll certainly be revisiting this conversation going into week 9 when they play the Chiefs in Germany. I think that is going to be yet another statement game for these Miami Dolphins. All right, a little bit of a beefy Sunday night recap there, but hey, these are two of the best teams in football, a bunch of fantasy players we care about. So I would say that this game deserved the beef. But with that, let's get into the rest of the headliners here from week 7. All right, let's dive into the headliners here, starting with Browns 39, Colts 38. Scott, this game was pretty exciting, very back and forth. The Browns might have got a little help from the officials at the end with some, questionable calls that there was a lot of discussion on, but they are able to come away with a win despite the fact that Deshaun Watson leaves after throwing 5 passes, only completing one of them. The update from Kevin Stefanski after the game, because Watson left after being questionable coming into it due to his shoulder injury. He left the game in the first quarter after being pushed to the ground following an incomplete pass. He was in the concussion protocol. He cleared the concussion protocol, but Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski told reporters after the game it was his decision to keep Watson on the sideline despite him clearing that concussion protocol. Quote, I just did not want to put him back out there. I wanted to protect our franchise quarterback. Again, interesting, but the Browns do come away with the win here.
Man, I wish PJ Walker had played better, because wouldn't it just be a fun story if the Browns had one of the best defenses in the NFL? I know it didn't look like it today, and they had a team that you could feel good about. And I think for the most part they do, but it's just rooting for Deshaun Watson is just, everybody has to have a different feeling about that. I don't find it particularly enjoyable. It was shocking to me to watch. Look, I know Gardner Minshew experiences 2 good plays, 3 bad plays, but he throws for a couple of touchdowns. He runs for a couple of touchdowns. And a week after the Browns made the 49ers offense look really bad, I realized the Niners had injuries in that game. Then Gardner Minshew throws up 38 points against them. This was a really entertaining game. There were a bunch of lead changes in the fourth quarter. It was the highest scoring game of the day. Some players got home on very weird paths. If you had Michael Pittman all day, you were thinking, oh, this just isn't my day. And Pittman had what should have been a walk-in touchdown. Minshew threw it a little bit off target. Maybe Pittman could have caught it on a different day, but then later he catches a long touchdown. He gets home. Josh Downs got home. Jonathan Taylor, I thought, looked pretty good. Mm-hmm. Even though Moss still got a lot of playing time, it's been like the linear takeoff that you want, like a plane taking off, right? Where you're running on the runway and then you lift off a little bit, then the wheels come up and then you start to ascend. I feel that's what Jonathan Taylor is doing. And I'm kind of kicking myself for not being more open-minded to drafting him, because I think in a year where there aren't that many right answers at running back, he looks like he could certainly be one. I don't know what to do with the Browns offense, man. The backs both got in the end zone. Elijah Moore was the best of a very uninspiring pass catching lot. We had the David Njoku game you get about once a month. I need multiple Njoku games before I'll trust him again. And I have no idea what the offense is going to be like when Deshaun Watson comes back, because he really hasn't played well this year. So the Browns have a lot of skill guys I'm interested in, and I don't really know week to week who I can play.
Yeah, the Watson on off the field stuff has been really frustrating too, just from like, if you do want this Browns offense to find success. And I like a lot of the players they have, like you said. Obviously the Watson thing is complicated and like being invested in it or whatever, but I think Elijah Moore has played really well this year in isolation, just like, PJ Walker or Dorian Thompson-Robinson, God forbid, like that's not going to get it done. Even like the current version of Deshaun Watson's, obviously, like you said, he's not been a good quarterback. Like his adjusted yards per attempt or adjusted net yards per attempt looks exactly the same from this year to last year. Like he's been maybe better than a stone cold disaster like he was at times last year, but he hasn't been a good quarterback. And I think I keep saying every week, I feel like the offense is just about to transition into whatever they want to really be with Deshaun Watson as their central figure now that Nick Chubb is out of the mix. But then we don't get Watson on the field, and it's hard to know if those results are ever going to come to fruition. Jerome Ford, I thought, looked, obviously has the 69-yard run. I think he's looked pretty good and pretty explosive in the pass game as well. I think he's a guy that would be, and Kareem Hunt's going to get in the mix here, scores 2 touchdowns. He's going to be a change of pace back. But I think Jerome Ford is showing why they want to, or they were at least in the preseason, so ready to just hand him that running back 2 job. The problem is he leaves this game with an ankle injury, and then Kareem Hunt punches in the game-winning score. So I'm with you that the Browns offense, it feels close, but I just don't have a ton of faith that like Watson is going to suddenly be A, available, and B, when he is available, that he's going to be a plus starting quarterback, because we just haven't seen it in what, like how long has it been now? 2 years?
It feels like a decade. You know how the NFL doesn't age. It ages like dog years. But the Browns sold their soul, sold all their draft capital, sold all their salary cap room to get this guy, and we don't know if he can play. Now, they do have maybe the most disruptive force on defense in Myles Garrett, who...
Oh, man.
It's so weird to think of somebody dominating a game on defense when his team allows 38 points, but Myles Garrett, it feels like every other snap, he's just wreaking havoc on the other team. It's just, even if you're not a Browns fan, if you're just a football fan, you have to watch him snap to snap. Somebody asked me a really good question before today where they had to cut somebody they didn't want to cut. And that's what happens in these heavy bye weeks, these heavy injury weeks, is you end up making cuts you don't want to make. And one of the players he was considering cutting was Zach Moss. This guy had a really strong team, had a lot of really good secondary backs. And I don't know, I think I might have even said that Moss was the cut relative to his team. Obviously, everybody's team is different. But I don't know what to do with Moss, because I feel like Taylor is going to be the 60-40 or the 70-30 or the 75-25. It's going to be the Jonathan Taylor show, even though the touches were pretty close to even today. They know Taylor's the better back. They've obviously paid Taylor as such. What type of role do you see Moss settling into as we get to the middle of the season? Is he going to be a what the heck flex, as Sigmund Bloom might say? Is he somebody you would try to hold? Or you think he's just going to be one of those contingency upside guys who, okay, if Taylor gets hurt, we can use him, but otherwise he doesn't carry a lot of value?
Yeah, well, number one, this is like the type of player I would really, really try not to cut. Really try not to cut, because Jonathan Taylor is a feature back in the NFL, and there is no more likely player to get hurt in the NFL than a feature back in the NFL. Like, Jonathan Taylor has one injury, and we're all ranking Zach Moss back in the top 15 backs every single week. So I would really try not to cut him, period. But overall, I do think what the heck flex is the perfect thing for him. I think he's going to be in that variety. Like, think about other number 2 backs around the NFL. Like, how many other guys do you really think are in like the what the heck? We'll talk about the Falcons situation, but much later on, and Tyler Algier and everything. But there aren't a ton of like backs that are behind a clear starter that I think are in that what the heck flex territory. I think Zach Moss firmly is.
Right. And I guess you made the key point of delineation. The moment Taylor were to get hurt, we know Moss, You said top 15. I mean, that's like the lowest I could imagine ranking Zach Moss in those weeks. I mean, there may be some weeks where he's like running back 6 or running back 8 or something like that, because
100%.
Not every team. We've seen it recently. Arizona had an injury with James Conner. Well, who's the guy behind him? It's been different guys in different weeks, right? I thought the Bears didn't give their backfield maybe the right rotation last week, and then this week it was kind of a different flow. And I mean, a lot of teams, we don't know even when somebody gets hurt exactly what their plan is, and we have to read between the lines, read the tea leaves, and then we might get it wrong anyway. It might be a flow of the game thing. Trying to get the Rams backfield today was hard, but the Colts, we know Taylor hurt, Moss good. So I agree with you. I would try not to cut Moss, and maybe he still has. I always think double-digit touches is the key number. As backfields have changed, the bell cow is pretty much dead. If I can look at a player and say, yeah, he's getting double-digit touches today with maybe 13 to 15 in his reasonable range of outcomes, that usually means he's a starter in most fantasy leagues.
Right. And we're saying all this when Zach Moss touched the ball 19 times today, which is, I don't think, going to happen every single week. And, Jonathan Taylor touches the ball well over 20 here because he had 3 catches and 4 targets. I don't think those guys are going to have quite that workload split, but I do think that transitions nicely into the final point I want to make on this game. Gardner Minshew is not perfect in this performance by any means. He threw a pick. He fumbled 3 times. I don't think you can count on 2 rushing touchdowns from Gardner Minshew every single week, but we know those RPO plays are in the playbook. So I was overall impressed with Gardner Minshew, though, just considering what he put on tape last week and then the opponent in this game. And like you mentioned, the Browns had just stifled out the 49ers offense. But the reason I'm also bullish on these running backs is that I just really like this offense overall. I think Shane Steichen calls it really well. I think they run with a lot of pace. There's going to be a lot of play volume and potential for those running backs to siphon off. And man, Michael Pittman is always, we've both been Pittman guys for a long time. I think he's a legit one. Was awesome to see him kind of course correct. Like you mentioned, that Gardner Minshew play probably should have been a touchdown, but then he gets the long touchdown afterwards. And Josh Downs is so good. I saw our social handle tweet out that like 65% Josh Downs is available in 65% of Yahoo leagues. Like 65% of people are asleep at the wheel. This guy is legit. Not like a pop gun slot receiver. I've seen Hayden Winks and Josh Norris of Underdog Fantasy call those types like the PPR scams. I think Josh Downs is more like a Tyler Lockett than a PPR scam. So the fact that these 2 receivers, I think, are fully breaking out, they have some other ancillary guys like Alec Pierce and everything. They've got these 2 running backs. Everything this year, Scott, with the Colts will be like kind of like tinged towards like an eye on next year, which sucks for the players that are playing this year just because Anthony Richardson's not available. But man, I feel really good about this offense and where it's at right now.
Totally agree. And this will become Josh Downs correction fab week, right? It'll be, oh yeah. He should have been 60. In fact, I'm shocked. I didn't realize he was under 50%. I know I had him mentioned as a sleeper a couple of weeks ago, and I just assumed that he must have graduated from that, but maybe the low tag on Downs was a comment on people not trusting Minshew. I hope today put that. Look, we don't need Gardner Minshew to save the world. We just need him to be good enough that Pittman and Downs and the running backs have buoyancy. And I think today proved that that's certainly in play.
All right, let's move on to a shocking result. Ravens 38, Lions 6. Scott, I know you watched this game closely. I'll just say, coming into it, there was a lot of talk about, Jared Goff, outdoor game. And, you look at the score real quick and like the broadcast with Greg Olsen and the boys are showing like a flag in the Ravens stadium, just going crazy in the wind. I was like, oh boy, the narrative is on.
Well, I'll tell you, somebody I watched every snap, and then I rewatched some of the snaps as I was getting ready to write my Week 7 wrap. The Ravens were the lead of that. Everything the Ravens called in the first half worked. And sometimes it worked because of the play design of Todd Monken. Sometimes it worked because the offensive line gave Lamar Jackson forever to throw. Sometimes it worked because the pressure did actually get home to Jackson, and Jackson bought some more time. And when Jackson was throwing, these guys were wide friggin' open. It was hard to find the defender sometimes. I'm sure a couple of times it was just coverage bust. Other times it's just you can't cover guys forever. If the pass rush doesn't get home, or if Jackson makes somebody miss, then it becomes a jailbreak. And Jackson has his best game of the year. He's going to probably be the quarterback 1 when everything shakes out for the end of the week. Mark Andrews, couple of touchdowns. Zay Flowers probably should have scored on a long reception he had in the first half. I think he just lost his balance for a second. But Zay Flowers did Zay Flowers things. The only down thing, they even got an 80-yard catch and run from Gus Edwards, which happens like once every apocalypse. So enjoy that. It's never going to happen again. But I hope you enjoyed it. The only negative thing I can say is that the ancillary, Aguilar had one target. It was a touchdown. It was a 12-yard touchdown. If you needed to dig deep, at least they got you 7 or 8 points. That's nice. Odell Beckham caught a couple of passes. Bateman caught a couple of passes. I still have no level of confidence with any of those guys.
Yeah.
But Jackson, MVP discussion, league winner discussion. Andrews, he's back where he belongs. He's strictly number 2 tight end on the board. With all the fun we've had to talk about Hawkinson's kind of empty PPR calories, we're big Sam Laporta guys, and he actually was fine in the second half today to kind of bail out his day. But Mark Andrews is supposed to be the Robin to Travis Kelce's Batman, and we saw this today. And it made me wonder. Now, look, teams hit the high end of their range sometimes. The Ravens had a couple of surprising losses. But maybe all the excitement that I had before the season for the Todd Monken offense, maybe I just need to be realistic about how long it takes for some of this stuff to assimilate. Because teams, they do so little with preseason, and you just need game reps. You need to be playing against opponents sometimes for things to click. And again, today, it couldn't have clicked any better. And against the Detroit team, I know we think of Detroit as a good offensive team. We don't necessarily think of their defense. Their defense has been playing very, very well until this week, and the Ravens just embarrassed them. They took them to the woodshed. Now, the key is not to get too worked up about your Lions. The Lions were due to have a stinker. They didn't play well. Thankfully, in the second half, all their main guys got home or got semi-home. Goff got some yards, and Jahmyr Gibbs actually looked really good all day, and that was a positive. 19 targets for the Sun God. He goes over 100 yards. Laporta didn't have a huge game by any means, but he did some work in the second half. I think at one point it was 13 first downs to the Ravens for 0 for Detroit. The first half could not have been more lopsided. I don't think Detroit needed to keep their starters in as long as they did. I think sometimes it's pretty risky. You're talking about guys you don't have good replacements for, but they decided to do that. So any of the Lions that you needed probably came through. The only disappointment there, and look, they only scored 6 points. They had a disappointing day overall, but Sun God got there. Jahmyr Gibbs was really, really good today. Was probably a DFS key. Laporta is probably going to chart in the top 10 at tight end. It's an ugly position. They did throw 6 passes to Jameson Williams. None of them were complete. One of them ricocheted off his helmet. And even though he had that really nice touchdown catch against Tampa Bay, I still think we need a blow-up game from Jameson Williams before I'll even think about starting him. I mean, he's still a couple of laps away before he's anywhere near my circle of trust. But I still think the Lions is just a bad day for them. As far as Baltimore, even though you see that box score and it looks like they have a wide usage tree, and they do, that hurts the ancillary guys. It doesn't hurt Mark Andrews. It doesn't hurt Zay Flowers, and it certainly doesn't hurt Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, the Lions coming out of this game, I'm a little torn because I'm with you that looking at the schedule going forward, how much am I really going to care about this performance when they play the Raiders at home next week? Then they go on their bye. Then they play the Chargers in LA. Then they get the Bears at home. Their offense will probably cruise in all 3 of those games. And like you said, from a fantasy perspective, we ended up basically getting everything we wanted out of here. I'm with you that Jameson Williams, dude, I don't even think it's not even that he's not near my starting consideration. I don't even think he's a guy that you have to roster just because I know he's a first round pick and he tore up the SEC and all the points you can throw out there, but there's just so little evidence that this guy is ready to rock as an NFL player. Even his touchdown against the Bucs, did he track it correctly? Did he, all this stuff? He was getting coaching points from Antoine Randall, their wide receiver coach, after that touchdown, because I still don't think they're completely there with him. And he mistracked another one and then ended up dropping it down the field today against the Ravens. So he's the only fantasy disappointment coming out of it. But it's overall is still a disappointing thing to see from a Lions team that it was on a tear, and this was just the exact type of spot you would worry about them faltering, and specifically Jared Goff faltering. And they obviously did falter in this spot in an epic way. I did not see this coming at all. So that's probably more of an NFL point than it is a fantasy point. But I do think it's just something to monitor for Goff and this offense later on in the year, not the next 3 weeks though.
But yeah, the schedule sets up perfectly. They got the Raiders Monday night, so a little extra time to prepare. Home game, Detroit. We know Goff has much better stats at home than he does on the road. Then they get the bye. Maybe they'll have Montgomery back. And David Montgomery, as much as people want to, he's a second contract running back, and he's just a guy. He actually fits this offense really well. And I think it can exist really nicely with Montgomery being the inside guy, with Gibbs being more of the playbook available, more of the outside stuff. Although Gibbs looked fine running between the tackles from what I saw. This is going to be a really nice offense when they get everybody. And we know the offensive line is one of the best in the NFL. Ben Johnson is a play designer that we like. Detroit just got caught in the quicksand. This game got out of hand quickly, and it's going to happen to every team, right? We're going to look back and say, in a month or two, how did the Niners lose to PJ Walker? How did that happen? There's going to be results every year that don't make sense, and this is just going to be. Not that Baltimore beating Detroit is in and of itself a surprise, but the fact this is that lopsided, I think that goes down a little bit. Just everything Baltimore called. Baltimore couldn't miss at the craps table. They rolled for like 45 minutes.
Yeah, and lastly, I'm with you on the Ravens that I think the takeaway here is this performance was brewing for this offense for a while, and like you could see it. It just wasn't totally reflected in the box score, and it's not going to look like this every single week. But I do think overall it needed a little bit of patience with Todd Monken and everything taken over here, and like a lot of these guys, by the way, just aren't 100% healthy right now. So I think this offense will look really good by the end of the year than it does early
guys wide open. Watch.
Yeah. Yep.
If you can, watch at least the highlights or watch the extended highlights, which you can find online. If you can't watch the whole game, Lamar Jackson had to be just loving it. Like, okay, this guy's got 10 yards of separation. It was like
not seeing that a lot in the Greg Roman offense the last 2 years.
for sure. Yeah. Here, make a contested catch. Maybe we'll draw a pass interference. Maybe we'll do the Torrey Smith. We'll get a pass interference flag.
All right, next one up here. Chiefs 31, Chargers 17. I don't know, Scott. This one's interesting to me. Where do you want to go with this?
Look, I'm not the biggest fan of victory laps, and Rashee Rice only had 5 for 60 and a touchdown, but it's just nice to see the guy on the field and getting something closer to the role that we've been expecting. Travis Kelce went bananas. Isaiah Pacheco did not have a great day on the ground, but he bails out his day with 4 catches and a touchdown. Mahomes has 4 touchdown catches. The monthly Marquez Valdez-Scantling, the seasonal showing of him pops, but
all on like broken plays too, by the way. Like maybe that's the one reason they keep him on the field more than any other receiver. Rashee Rice still ran fewer routes than Marquez Valdez-Scantling, but he passed up guys like Sky Moore and whatever. But maybe that's the one reason that they keep MVS on the field so much, is like when the play breaks down, he's just knows like what Pat Mahomes is going to do. But I don't know. It is what it is.
Well, and the stats this year when they've targeted MVS have actually been pretty good. Before this week, I think it was 110 quarterback rating when they targeted Rice. It was over 90 when they targeted MVS, and then everybody else lagged behind. So what happened this week? Not a lot of Sky Moore, 3 targets. Not a lot of Kadarius Toney, 1 target. I have no idea why they thought they needed McCole Hardman, but they brought him back. He got 3 targets that went nowhere. Noah Gray had a
big
target.
Big punt return.
That's true. If you're in a punt return league, you have my permission to do what you need to do. All I ask. Look, Andy Reid already in the Hall of Fame as far as I'm concerned. Patrick Mahomes, obviously a generational talent. Just let your best players be your best players. Yeah. Let Travis Kelce absorb 13 targets. Let Rashee Rice, and I'm not trying to make out Rashee Rice to be Justin Jefferson or something, but Rashee Rice should have a regular role in this offense. He should be your second or third most targeted player most weeks. And today they let him do that. And then just encouraging to see that. Also encouraging to see Pacheco involved enough in the passing game that in a day where he doesn't run anywhere, he still ends up with a playable fantasy score. He still ends up with 14 points and a half-point PPR, which I think is the standard scoring for Yahoo. So that's still a playable score. It doesn't win for you, but I can handle that. On the Chargers side, man, really bad game for Herbert. I haven't seen Eckler look right since he's come back, and I don't want to ding a guy who's probably playing hurt. You admire that he's just playing at all. Congratulations if you saw the Josh Palmer game coming, the long touchdown from Joshua Kelly, really quiet game from Keenan Allen. I didn't pick the Chargers to go to the Super Bowl this year. I'm not even sure if I had them going to the playoffs, but the 4 or 5 previous seasons, pretty much as soon as they got Herbert, I've looked at, okay, first contract quarterback, and I like a lot of pieces on defense, and they have interesting skill guys. I've always thought this was a sleeping giant, and maybe if the coaching was right, maybe if the injury luck was right, I'm just at the point now where, and maybe I'll give up at the Chargers at the wrong point, and they'll reel off 5 wins in a row or something. But they just feel like the underachieving team in the NFL, one of the teams anyway that fits that description. And I don't see a lot of people I can play confidently. You have to play Allen. If you drafted Herbert, you probably don't have a quarterback who's good enough to replace him. And eventually Eckler will get healthy and he'll perform well again. But I feel like this team finishes under their team total every week. For all I know, that data could be wrong. I'm just throwing it off at the top of my head. The bottom line is the Chargers frustrate me. So can you unfrustrate? You spend a lot of time with Eckler. You're always well plugged into the Chargers. What can you say to somebody who's really kind of sick of this team?
I don't have a lot of positive things to say to you, Scott, because this was the year where I was like, I'm not jumping on the Chargers bandwagon. You know, it seems like everybody in football media wants to do it every single year. And I just felt like coming into this year that the offense, or that the entire team really was a little more name than game. And I think that's still the case right now. You know, you mentioned the efforts of the offense the last 2 weeks. Obviously good defenses, okay? The Chiefs are a good defense, although they blew some plays today. That long Josh Kelly run was crazy. They gave him some plays down the field as well in the pass game. It's a good overall defensive unit. The Cowboys at last week, good overall defensive unit, but still troubling performances. And I really think the fact that we've gotten, I just don't think this offense is going to be the same without Mike Williams involved, like without a true vertical threat. And look, credit to Josh Palmer for 5 for 133 and, you know, a 60-yard catch and everything like that. I think he has emerged of being like a really quality receiver, but he's not somebody that the defense is scared of. And like, other than, you know, Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler when he's healthy, but from just a passing game standpoint down the field, I think there's just a lack of juice. And I don't think Herbert has played, like, I think Herbert has to play perfectly for this offense to be like a 30-point unit. And when he plays imperfectly, as he has the last 2 weeks, these are the results.
Maybe we've been spoiled by the 2014 rookie receiver class and some of the classes we've seen after that. But I'm still surprised that Quentin Johnson is progressing as slowly as he is. Is there any hope of him being, could he be one of these slow developing Polaroids, or just like, we'll let somebody else stash him because he just seems really far behind right now?
He seems so far behind, man. And they're not doing anything really to like get him. Daniel Popper wrote a really good piece in The Athletic this week that I read, and like a lot of what he found looking into Quentin Johnson, like the routes they're having him run and the way he looks just really completely, totally raw as a separator lines up with my evaluation of him as a player. But his interesting note was that they're having him run like the George Pickens route tree from last year, where it's just like a lot of deep routes. And Johnson's best stuff was like working over the middle and after the catch in college. So they want him to turn into something that he is not right now. And I don't know if he ever will turn into that. So for me, I think like it's either going to be the last like month of the season or 2024 when it clicks on for him. Cause right now we've just seen nothing. These 3 games we've seen with him as a like not a full-time player, but a high-end contributor to this offense without Mike Williams.
So I'm willing to accept if I'm just late to the Quentin Johnson breakout this year. So be it. I'm going to.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to kill you. That's the thing too. Is like I don't think it's going to be one of those breakouts like with Rashee Rice, and I'll finish with Rashee Rice here in a second. It's like I think you could look at him, and even Rice. I don't know that he's going to like be a quote league winner as much as I'm like ready to shoot that term into the sun. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he's going to like totally win your league for you or anything, or be that type of guy, right? Like the guy you need to win. But I think the early signs from Rashee Rice is like, this is something you probably don't want to miss out on. Like be early in picking him up. Mm-hmm. I don't think that Quentin Johnson is, and maybe this ages poorly, whatever, that's fine. But I don't think like, even if he does end up hitting, I don't think he's going to hit to such a note that he takes over as the most important receiver if Keenan Allen is healthy on this offense that already is underperforming.
And I want to be fair about Rice. I took him. The best thing about him today was the props. He beat his catch prop. He beat his yardage prop. He obviously scored a touchdown, which was nice. I still ranked him like wide receiver 28. Made him playable, and he made a little bit of a gain over his projection, but it wasn't like he blew up. It wasn't like, oh, I lost my game because I was up against Rashee Rice, or I won my game because I had Rashee Rice. He was a contributor, And that's what we're asking them to do. He's not going to shove Kelsey out of the way. And Pacheco is maybe the, I don't know, underreported story here. Just remember forever, we were just like, oh, the Chiefs, they just, sometimes it's McKinnon and sometimes it's CEH. And, do they trust Pacheco to have a bigger role? He's very quietly shoving these other guys out of the way. And again, he only went for like 3 yards a carry today. And the Chargers, I thought, defended him well on the run. And still Pacheco gets home. He is in the circle of trust. I feel like he's probably climbed a couple of rounds from if we had redrafted today versus how we felt about him in August.
Could not agree more on Pacheco. He's been a big story of the season so far. Let's stay with an LA team here and talk about the Steelers beating the Rams 24-17. Hey, Scott, it wasn't quite preseason performance from the Steelers offense, but watching that team today, I just, Deontay Johnson's stat line doesn't like blow it out of the water or anything. He has 5 catches for 79 yards on 6 targets, but there were several plays were just like, yep, it really helps to have a guy that can consistently get open sprinkled into this offense that we were obviously way too excited about to start the season.
Right. Yeah. Well, another case of what you needed from the skill guys happened, right? Pickens gets over 100 and Johnson 5 for 79 on 6 targets. You'll take that on a first game back. And, Deontay Johnson hasn't scored a touchdown since Terry Bradshaw was playing, but we'll live with that.
That's true.
Najee Harris, touchdown, 17 touches. We'll take it. If you had to play Jalen Warren, he only got 7 touches, but one of them was a touchdown run. So he's not really gaining on Harris. Harris is still the main guy here, but at least it's only a 2-man backfield. Pickett was good enough to get the job done. I don't think anybody's out there starting Pickett proactively. We just want him to be good enough that we can play Johnson with some confidence. We can play Pickens with some confidence, and maybe Pat Freiermuth if he comes back in a few weeks. It was hard to put him on IR or cut him in some leagues this week, but he's out for a few weeks. It's just the way it is. And just a classic Steelers game, right? Their fans, I know everybody knows the LA teams don't have great fan support, but the stadium is basically a Steelers home game, and Tomlin comes in with a team that, I don't know, talent-wise, might be the weakest in the AFC North, although they're all kind of pretty close. I don't want to make out to be like Pittsburgh's a pop gun 4-13 team, but it just feels like a Mike Tomlin special where you love them as an underdog. You don't always trust them as a favorite. And at least most of the angles you played for Pittsburgh today got home.
Yeah, no, I think this is probably going to be more akin to the offense we see, I think, this season than like the disasters that we got early in the year because just because of the defensive talent that they were playing in the 49ers and the Browns to start the year. I think
horrible schedule. Horrible
schedule. And again, I think having a player like Deontay Johnson, who's just such a good receiver and such a good route runner and a good separator, a reliable target, at some point he'll score a touchdown, but I think he does make a pretty big difference to this offense overall. On the Rams, man, they're back. I don't even know if we really want to talk about their backfield. Like, congratulations if you landed on Darrell Henderson. It was clear going into it that it was going to be Royce Freeman and Darrell Henderson this morning. That was the reporting from Adam Schefter. That's what it was. Matthew Stafford, I still maintain there are some really good moments from Stafford this year, but I'm starting to now stack up games where I'm like, it's coming. We're gonna have a really big game from this past game, and Pittsburgh's defense is no slouch, but I don't know. It's another kind of almost day from the Rams offense.
Yeah, nice. Going if you got Puka and Nakua in trade. I know Salvici was talking about a great time to go get him. 8 for 154 on 12 targets. You totally write off Cooper Kupp. Even the great receivers are going to have a game like he had today. 2 for 29 on 7 targets. If you needed to play Henderson or Freeman, at least they got you double-digit touches. Henderson didn't have a great average, but he got the touchdown. Zach Evans, who I actually screwed up a fab bid on him, and then I had the opportunity to trade for him. Some fab money, and I was so desperate at running back, I actually traded a little bit of fab to get Zach Evans. And then by the end of the weekend, I wasn't even playing him because the news came out. Although I did get my hands on Henderson, just a desperation grab. Sounds like Williams is going to be out multiple weeks. I don't know what to do with the Rams. I'm never surprised when they go right down the field, and I'm never surprised where Matthew Stafford makes what was that play? Who were they throwing to? Mm-hmm. Tua Atwell seems to make one good play a game. So you hope that play like today was a touchdown. That's great, but he was only targeted twice. I don't know how you could play him with any confidence. I thought Tyler Higbee was headed towards a 70-catch season. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Good news if you have Puka. Good news if you have Kupp. I would totally not take seriously what Kupp did today, but I felt like I was under expecting what the Rams were going to do at the beginning of the season. I was pleasantly surprised at how good they looked and how good Williams looked and how good Puka looked and really how good Stafford looked. And today I'm back to maybe they're the 7-10 team I thought they were in the summer.
Yeah, I'm kind of definitely nearing that a little bit. Like just good enough to be pretty disappointing is kind of where I am with the LA Rams. Last thing, Puka Nakua's big game is yet another reminder that you can target the Steelers with perimeter receivers. That's like a bankable defensive matchup every single week. All right, moving on to the next game here. Got Patriots 29, Bills 25. Scott, what a surprise. This one definitely took me by surprise, given the trend of those two teams.
Yeah, I thought if you believe in the Stanford Wong teasers, I thought Buffalo made perfect sense. They're going to go to New England. What have the Patriots shown? Their offense is a joke. Their defense is missing a lot of pieces, and Patriots controlled this game. Buffalo, you tried to do the term paper at the night it was due or the morning it was due, and almost stole this game. And then Mac Jones let it drive right down the field. I would love to see some trends established in the New England offense. I'd love to see Kendrick Bourne do it for another week. Denario Douglas was really good today. They got a couple of plays from Hunter Henry. Gesicki caught a 2-point conversion. Backfield didn't really go anywhere. Ramondre Stevens is just a frustrating guy. He did get the 6 catches, was bailed him out in PPR, but to be out carried by Ezekiel Elliott got the touchdown.
Yeah.
Mac Jones is all I'm asking for Mac Jones. He's one of these quarterbacks. Nobody wants to start Mac Jones. We just want him to be good enough to make Hunter Henry playable, or maybe Douglas playable, or maybe Kendrick Bourne playable. And against the Buffalo defense, and I know they're missing a lot of key people, it was encouraging to see them move the ball. Encouraging to see them. I think everybody thought when Buffalo went ahead, well, that's it. We've seen this movie before. Mac Jones is going to have a soul-crushing drive, and the Patriots are going to lose. Oh, no, they went right down the field. Unfortunately, I have so much bad history with this offense. I feel like I need to see it again before I have any level of trust. Do you think Josh Allen's playing hurt right now? He got them in a position to maybe win the game, but he did not play well for about 2.5 quarters. And we know last year he finished the season with that shoulder injury, and he was on the injury report for a while. They've downplayed it. It was nice to see Dalton Kincaid get involved, 8 targets. He caught all of them for 75 yards. Maybe it's about time to press play on him aggressively, but Buffalo looked out of sync. And I wonder if Allen is maybe not 100%.
I wonder the same thing. Yeah, I hope it doesn't start to feel like last year where the Bills get off to a really good start. Josh Allen sustains some type of injury, and then we're looking at like, oh man, is he playing through an injury? Why is it not looking as good? Because sometimes you watch Josh Allen and I'm like, yeah, he's probably playing hurt. Other time I'm like, yeah, that just looks like Josh Allen playing a little bit like, devil may care, type of style that he has. So, yeah, I don't really know what to do. I don't really know what to do with the Bills, man. It's difficult, but I will say, just like it's similar to what we talked about with the Lions, where it's like, well, all their guys that we care about other than Gabe Davis, but Gabe Davis is going to have his rocky moments. I loved how there was kind of like, oh, there's a consensus now on Gabe Davis. He's an every week start. I'm like, okay, let's give it a few weeks before we think like Gabe Davis is really having his moment here. I think Davis is the most troubling one here, where if this offense is not going to have that ceiling that we thought about, it's going to be tough for him to hit every single week.
I feel Gabe Davis almost feels like a tight end to me in that he needs a touchdown to pay off. And if he doesn't score a touchdown, you're never happy. That's a really, really good comparison. Yeah,
you're
never happy with Gabe Davis unless he scores a touchdown. Granted, he had like a stretch of touchdowns in 4 straight games. But if Dalton Kincaid is going to spread his wings, that's bad news for Gabe Davis.
All right, those are your headliners. Let's move on to the rest of the games here from Week 7. All right, oh boy, we got to talk about this one. We've got Falcons 16, Bucks 13. We could talk about the Falcons, lovely win here over a division rival, but obviously the biggest story coming out of this is Bijan Robinson did not receive a single touch during the first half. Complete bystander. And Arthur Smith explained at halftime that Robinson is, quote, just not feeling all that great. Robinson said after the game he had this really bad headache. I don't know, Scott. I had someone say to me today in my Discord, like, this is just like makes fantasy like why I hate it and like why I don't even want to play it sometimes. Because like there was no way to see this coming. And I don't know, man. Obviously, if you have Robinson today, there's no like advice here other than just like you got to eat this, but pretty weird situation.
My thought was, when he wasn't playing, I first thought he must have broken a team rule and this is like a quiet suspension and eventually he's going to come in. And when they kept him off the field the whole game and they talk about him not feeling well, why even dress him, right? You only get a limited amount of personnel on game day, and Algiers a good back. Patterson was fine in a pinch. I just would have, if you didn't feel comfortable playing, and I guess they were going to ask him every quarter if his headache had gone away. I don't know. I don't understand Arthur Smith, man. I'm never going to understand Arthur Smith. And of course, just when we wanted to feel good about Kyle Pitts and Drake London again, they both have mediocre games. And London had that strange play by the pylon where I watched it 10 times. I'm still not really sure what the right call was, but that easily could have been a touchdown if the football is 1 inch closer to the pylon. But the Falcons are the most frustrating team in fantasy, and I can't hold it against Robinson if he was sick. This is going to happen a few times every week in fantasy, and don't get mad at Robinson. Don't get mad at us. Don't get mad at the world. Just, sometimes a guy gets sick on game day. I just don't know. If you don't feel comfortable with somebody playing them, I just wouldn't. I would have made them a game day scratch.
The weird part is that he did play some snaps. He just never touched the ball. Mm-hmm. So, and Robinson again said after the game, he's good to go for week 8. But basically his quote was, "It started last night. I was feeling weird. I woke up just completely out of it. I tried to take medicine so that I could be good for the game, but my head was hurting bad. I don't know. I don't know what was going on. I tried to go in pregame, but then Coach Smith said, 'We'll be all right. Let's get you right.'" So I don't know. Maybe it's a situation where they were hoping right up until halftime, right up until kickoff, he was going to be fine. But it is what it is, man. I don't know what to tell you. I don't think there's going to be some giant league investigation about it if that's what you're hoping for. Obviously, seen people crying about it and all that on Twitter. But none of that is coming. I will say from another fantasy troll perspective, Desmond Ridder fumbled the ball trying to go into the end zone. That would have been his second rushing touchdown of the day. There is a part of me, and it is a legit weapon, okay? There's a part of, Desmond Ridder rushing to the goal line, legit weapon, because he can move a little bit, and I'm sure teams are mostly selling out to stop their usually very good ground game. But there is still a part of me, because we know Arthur Smith is in tune with this whole fantasy football thing, that he has to quietly relish, I know nobody's got Desmond Ridder on their fantasy team. Even the super flex sickos are probably barely starting Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder rushing touchdowns have to bring Arthur Smith an extra sense of joy because of that.
It really feels like Arthur Smith is cutting his nose to spite his face. And all those quotes he's given earlier this year about he's not playing fantasy football and Drake London doesn't care about how many targets he gets and all that. Just play your best freaking players, man. Make your offense dynamic. Scare the defense. Put your guys in position to succeed. He doesn't do that. Also, Ridder lost 3 fumbles in this game. I always feel like Ridder is 1 or 2 bad plays away from. We know that Taylor Heineke is nothing special, but Ridder's been leaving a lot of points and a lot of plays on the field, and I wonder at what point. Now, great, they may play Heineke and realize Heineke is worse. I don't think Heineke is any panacea, but I feel like Ridder has played very poorly the last couple of weeks. Yeah,
totally. I think Arthur Smith looks like he's so frustrated with this team, but this is the team they have built there. Anything on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? I think that we're starting to see a little bit of Baker Mayfield regression after a hot start. And man, if I could bet on Rachaad White under, if you could bet on the under for yards per carry, I'd bet him under 4 every single week.
Yeah, the good news with White, he's just become one of the, and I realize this can be you go down this path, it can hurt you more often than it helps you sometimes. But he's getting all this volume, right? He gets 19 touches today. Keyshawn Vaughn gets 4. Tompkins gets 3. So 13 for 34, you go nowhere with it. But 6 for 65, he catches all of his targets. He ends up with 99 total yards and 6 catches. And in PPR, that gets him into double digits. And he's been a little bit unlucky with some of the opponent draws. Baker, man. Baker's hard to watch. Baker's just good enough to lose with. I wrote some good things about Baker earlier in the year that I kind of regret. At least he did. The bread was buttered with the right guys. Godwin had 12 targets. Evans had 6 targets. They both had decent games. Not blow-up games by any means, but Evans outproduced his projection, and Godwin was a little bit under his. So I can live with that. This game, Atlanta wins at 16-13. I actually had trouble remembering who won this game because I felt like both teams lost. I don't feel like neither team really deserved to win this game.
That is very well said. I could not. That's a very NFC South thing to say,
isn't it?
Yeah. What a beautiful division. All right. A division that's a little bit more exciting. NFC West. Seahawks 20, Cardinals 10. Hey, the Seahawks got big performance from two rookie receivers in this win, Scott. It wasn't just Jackson Smith and Jigba who scored a touchdown on 7 targets. Jake Bobo, this guy is going to become like a fantasy problem. You can just take it to the bank right now. 61 yards, touchdown. Guy can play a little bit, man. I don't think the Seahawks are going to ever have the ceiling on offense that I kind of imagined them coming into this year, but they take care of business against a Cardinals team that, is now looking towards like, when are we getting a Kyler Murray on the field?
Yeah, I had a reminder in my phone to make sure I checked about 4:15 to make sure I knew the status of DK Metcalf. I think in one of my teams I had to play Jalen Warren and was just happy that Jalen Warren got a touchdown, 6 touches. What do you got on Jake Bobo? If Metcalf needs to miss more time, or if Lockett were to get hurt, obviously JSN got going in this game, 7 targets, he catches a touchdown. But if anybody were to miss significant time of their top 3, can Bobo become a factor? And I got to admit, one of my key takes before the season was that Geno Smith would retain close to enough of what he did last year that it wouldn't worry me about Metcalf. It wouldn't worry me about Lockett. It wouldn't worry me. I ended up with not a lot of JSN, but it wouldn't have hurt me if I had JSN. I thought this offense would maybe maintain 85 or 90% of last year's efficiency, and that just seems like a foolish thing to say right now.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say Geno's been like a disaster or anything. It's just a little bit has been shaved off the ceiling, perhaps. Jake Bobo, the thing I said about him for a while, like to start the year, was that this guy was earning snaps in place of JSN because he's a great blocker, and then they obviously want him in there on the play action looks. If they're gonna have him be a blocker, he needs to also be like not a tell on the defensive side of the ball. And you can kind of tell, right? Like he's got pretty reliable hands. He made a nice touchdown catch today. I think I don't have a like reception perception, scroll to unveil here on old Jake Bobo, but he does seem like he's earning a quality role on this team.
So now I guess we have to talk about the Arizona backfield.
You don't have to.
I had Keontae Ingram on my sleeper list only because their first game after Connor got hurt, they used him and they marginalized DeMercado, who I liked, who I had ranked higher the previous week. So, okay, go by not by teams say, but what they do. And now DeMercado, who nobody could have started in clear conscience, gets 17 touches in this game. I mean, I realize 75 yards, 4 catches. That's not going to win you anything. But if anybody had asked me point blank, thankfully nobody did. But if anybody had asked me point blank Ingram or DeMercado, I would have said, yeah, you have to play Ingram. And Ingram doesn't even get on the field. So the Cardinals, again, a team that I expected nothing from, and the season started, and they had some near misses, and then they had the big upset win of the Cowboys. The Cardinals are better than we think, and now it's like, well, they kind of stink. I needed Brown to play well for me in my guillotine league, and where I couldn't play Metcalf, I had to play Marquise Brown, and I'm afraid that I'm in jeopardy going into Monday night. It didn't help that Calvin Ridley did nothing. League winner Calvin Ridley, right? Did nothing on Thursday night. But you're spared from my wrath, Calvin Ridley, because you didn't play on Sunday. But we'll get even with you. I'm curious what your panic meter talk with Andy is going to be about Calvin Ridley. But I don't understand you, Arizona. How come you played one set of guys one week? And I thought DeMercado played great replacing Connor a few weeks ago. I was trying to get him in Fab, didn't get him, felt unlucky. Then he didn't play, felt I dodged a bullet. And then today he's their primary guy. Can you make sense of this for me? Because I can't.
Nope. I think I'd be a fool to try to like give you a hot, confident take on this because, we've gotten 2 mixed signals from the team in back-to-back weeks. So I'm not sure where this one goes. I am really interested to see what this offense looks like with Kyler Murray, though. I think Marquise Brown's probably not going to get traded before the deadline. Maybe that ages poorly. But, Arizona's currently in track to get the number 2 overall pick if the draft was to happen today. Mm-hmm. So they'd be in range for one of these quarterbacks. But there's, feels like there's sort of shifting opinions about the quarterbacks. What a shock, right? Like, oh, maybe Caleb Williams isn't like a generational prospect like everybody wanted to talk about. Maybe he is. I don't know. It's the whole season still to find out. But I think Kyler Murray could easily be the Arizona Cardinals starting quarterback next year, and I'm interested to see what he looks like for the starting quarterback position on this team this year. All right, let's move on here. Broncos 19, Packers 17. Christian Watson comes out of this one with a knee injury. Looked pretty bad towards the end of that game. I mean, I don't know, Scott. These two teams are just a little bizarre to me. You could have told me like anything happened in this game going into it, and I probably would have believed you.
Yeah, the frustrating thing for me is that I wanted to see what Aaron Jones could do with a heavy workload against this Denver defense, and maybe they just didn't want to overextend Jones in his first game back, but he only gets 11 touches. Corey Dillon, AJ Dillon gets 17. And look, again, I gave out Jaleel McLaughlin as a possible sleeper, knowing I said up front, look, he's not going to get a lot of touches. You're going to hope he makes a couple of splash plays. Well, 5 for 45 is fine. I did not see Javonte Williams handling 18 touches and looking pretty good doing it.
Yeah.
So McLaughlin goes down as an L. A couple of weeks ago, I felt like every sleeper hit. This week, it wasn't the greatest sleeper list. And I feel bad about that because in week 7, with so many teams off and so many teams battling injuries, I think people needed some of these guys. Okay, Cortland Sutton, touchdown. Jerry Jeudy, 5 for 64. I don't know if that gets Steve Smith off his back. I'm pretty much done with Jerry Jeudy, but I'm curious if one of those guys is going to get traded. I don't know what would happen for Marvin Mims to play a lot. He had one rush for minus yards in this game. He had 1 target. Maybe I'm stubborn, Matt. I'm still holding on to Marvin Mims. I still think somebody's going to get traded, and eventually they're going to unveil Marvin Mims. That feels a little bit more stupid as the week goes on. Can you talk me out of that?
I mean, it feels like almost a lock that Judy's going to get traded. That seems to be like the biggest talking point right now. Just like there's not a consensus among NFL GMs what what his worth is. Some people think late day 2 pick, according to Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. Other people think it's a day 3 pick. I think that Sutton actually would be in a pretty good position if that was the case. And I mean, yeah, I'd love to get myself excited about Marvin Mims, but at the same time, couldn't you still see any of these other guys running more routes than him if and when Jerry Jeudy gets traded? You would think that wouldn't be what happens, but I could still see that being the case.
Could you see Sutton getting traded?
No, maybe, but probably not. I think that was what was lost in the whole discourse about like these receivers in the offseason, is that they wanted to shop both of these guys. They made Sutton available, but they also made Jeudy available. They were just asking for more for Jeudy because he's not on like a multi-year deal at this point. He's still on his rookie contract and the 5th-year option is present. But I think they would probably get more return today if they shopped Sutton than they did back in the summer. And I think they'd get less return than what they were hoping to get from Jeudy back in the summer. But I think this coaching staff likes Cortland Sutton more, so he'll probably stay around.
Interesting. I think this is one of those cases where I would just throw everybody out there and see what people want to pay for and work off that. And look, I know it's kind of the cheap advice, right? Like I saw some people talking about, should you trade Raheem Mostert? Well, if somebody will overpay for him, yes. If somebody won't overpay for them, no. It's like, well, that's really helpful.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that we can have that kind of authorization out there in the fantasy streets, but I would throw them both out there and see what the market will bear. I don't think either one of them is going to be part of the next great Broncos team.
Next game up here, Giants 14, Commanders 7. Scott, Sam Howell took 6 sacks. He's now on pace for 97 sacks. It's just absurd. It's like, I don't even care about talking about anything else in Washington's offense because that's so bad. And like, I've got, there are flashes from Howell, I get it, but this is just such a big problem. Like when you're losing 52 yards and you're killing drives with sacks, like it's just such a big problem. And it's either like if he can't stop taking sacks, you're probably going to have to stop playing him at some point because you're just not going to function as an offense like that. And if you don't want to stop playing him, you have to do something else from a coaching staff point that doesn't put him in position to take 6 sacks. So it's just like something's got to change with this offense, which is a shame because I really still think there's so many talented players on this team.
Sacks are more of a quarterback stat than an offensive line stat. Stop it with this. Oh, poor Sam Howell. The Washington offense is hanging him out to dry. This is mostly on Howell. Look, I don't want to beat the guy up too much. He has a limited amount of NFL experience, but he will find somebody who will hold you as long as Sam Howell will hold the ball, waiting for the opposing team to sack him. And today illustrates that, because nobody thought a great thing about the Giants defense. Any defense, any DST against the Washington Commanders is viable. This game was 14-7, Matt. It felt like 3-2. It felt like 0-0.
Yeah.
It felt like nothing worked in this game. The only thing I was particularly impressed with is McLaurin had that 6 for 90, and he had one catch, that sideline catch, where it was obvious he was going to get absolutely laid out.
Oh, yeah.
He kept his concentration, made the catch. The Giant defender put the hit on the defenseless receiver. They got the 15 yards, and McLaurin just got up no worse for wear. I love that guy, and I hope, and I don't want to pick on Sam Howell, because where he was drafted, if you were told that he was going to be like a lifetime backup and you'd get like the 8 or 10 years, you'd get like something like a Ryan Fitzpatrick career out of him, you would be like, great. Or even something less than that. If he even turned into like Taylor Heineke, you'd be like, oh, wow, good pick. He's a useful member of a football team. Probably shouldn't be a starter. I just hope we don't look at the end of Terry McLaurin's career and say, what could have happened if this guy played with a star receiver just once. There. Just once, man. I want him to be Justin Herbert's receiver. I want him to be Patrick Mahomes's or Josh Allen's. There's somebody. There's so many good quarterbacks. I want him to have that. He doesn't have it right now. I'll admit this. I know they only scored 14 points. I don't hate Tyrod Taylor. I'm happy. They easily could have beaten Buffalo last week. Maybe they should have. He got Darren Waller going. They got, even though the Giants are running behind such a makeshift offensive line, Barkley's gotten home 2 weeks in a row. That's something. Jalen Hyatt had a couple of long plays. He's become interesting. I thought Wan'Dale Robinson was going to do that ugly, like 6 for 49. Instead, he did 1 for 22. But neither one of them helps you. But I would not rush Daniel Jones back. I think Taylor's been, and look, I'm not throwing a parade for somebody who scored 14 points, but Tyrod Taylor's one of the better backups in the league and somebody who doesn't kill you if he needs to play 4 or 5 games.
One of the best backups in the league for sure. And let's just be real. He has looked much better in this offense than Daniel Jones has this year. And I think it's because Daniel Jones has played under really bad conditions and he was on pace. His sack pace is right up there with Sam Howell, which, like you said, is a quarterback stat, but also like there are some times where he's got nothing to work with, like from a pressure perspective. But I do think Taylor adjusts under pressure a little bit better. He's got a little better pocket presence than Daniel Jones, and I think that's been a big part of why Tyrod has had some success here. I love Tyrod. I always root for Tyrod. I have for a long, long time. So I'm happy to see him getting a couple moments here and, getting this offense rolling a little bit with these guys. It's not going to look great this year. It didn't look great today, 14 points, like you said, overall, but bottom line, I do think he is able to get much more out of this offense right now than Daniel Jones. And until Jones convinces you otherwise, I think that's just like the fact of the matter. Last thing on the Commanders, man. Yeah, I can't say enough about Terry McLaurin, who at different points was just like, fine, I'll do it myself type of thing today.
That's a perfect way to say it. Right. Yeah. Terry McLaurin's a baller, man.
Last game. How could we end anywhere else with the backup quarterback bowl? Bears 30, Raiders 12. I can't wait to get Andy Behrens's Bears fan group chat check-in tomorrow on the Panic Meter episode on where they're at with Tyson Bagent. Can't wait for that. That will be exciting. But I mean, Brian Hoyer went about as well as you could have expected with old Brian Hoyer at this point. And hey, this game happened.
Yeah, congratulations, Raiders, right? We all thought the squeaky wheel narrative would come through for Devontae Adams. It feels like he started this game with 5 catches, and then he ended it with 7 for 57, no touchdown. He had a good chance at a touchdown, but couldn't secure it.
Yep.
Josh Jacobs lost the touchdown. We didn't get the second foot down. He's another guy who was lined up for a big game. He hits 41 total yards against this awful Bears defense. I was one of several people who thought that Michael Mayer made sense if you needed a sleeper at tight end.
Same.
He doesn't even outperform Austin Hooper on his own team. We don't want to kill these guys. I mean, they played with Brian Hoyer for 3 quarters. They played with a quarter of Aiden O'Connell. I'm surprised they didn't start Aiden O'Connell. I don't know what playing Brian Hoyer at this point accomplishes. If you don't think Aiden O'Connell is going to crush his confidence by playing in NFL games, and they played him late in this game, they obviously don't feel that way. Give him a chance to develop. It's not like Brian Hoyer is 57 years old, man. I mean, this guy played for John Madden, I think. I don't understand that at all. Previous week, I thought Donta Foreman looked really good, and the Bears made a mistake not getting him more involved. Now, only the 19 touches, he gets the 3 touchdowns. I feel just good to see that guy balling and playing well. And at least Bagent, and I feel like we said this over and over on this show, right? With these backup quarterbacks, with these lesser quarterbacks, all I want you to do is say, okay, does my offense have a guy who's better than everybody else in the passing game? Yes, we do. Who is that? DJ Moore. Target him 9 times. Yeah, it only went for 8 for 54, but at least it doesn't kill you. We saw the Jets before the bye week had steered into that with Garrett Wilson. Okay, Zach Wilson, and tough watch. I'm not advising anybody get invested in watching Zach Wilson highlights, but at least when he's back to throw, it's going to Garrett Wilson. At least the Bears, Fields was doing it. Bagent was doing it. They're offering some buoyancy to DJ Moore. Again, 8 for 54, whatever. It's not a great line, although at least if you're in a PPR league, it kind of bails you out. But at least Bagent was throwing the ball at the guys we want him to throw the ball, which really is just DJ Moore. I guess some people might have been disappointed that Cole Kmet did nothing in this game, but was happy to see Freeman play well. And it was a great spot for the Raiders. I'm sure a lot of people needed Devontae Adams for props, for DFS. Josh Jacobs was a lot of people were pounding the table for him, justifiably so. Mayer was a popular pickup. What a mess this team is, man.
Yeah, what a mess. I am interested in at least what happens with this Bears running back room. Honestly, when everybody's healthy, because I kind of thought they needed to get a look at Roschon Johnson just to see if he's a running back they can count on for the future. But Foreman has looked so good, and he's just a good running back, right? He was a good running back for the Carolina Panthers last year. I'm curious. And then even when Khalil Herbert gets back, what does the rotation look like? And if it's just all these guys taking turns, I think that's just bad for everybody from fantasy perspective and from an NFL perspective. But hey, man, I'm at least interested in that on the Bears. And obviously, we'll see what Tyson Bagent can continue to do. And yeah, DJ Moore, just know the assignment, buddy. And he definitely did that.
I know trades just so infrequently happen, but could we just see wouldn't Donta Foreman be great in the Ravens? I know the Ravens, they probably think the solution to everything is just is Mark Ingram still available and playing football? Oh, Melvin Gordon, let's get him on the practice squad. I mean, I'm expecting them to sign Justin Forsett one of these weeks, right? But Donta Foreman on the Ravens, I'd like it. The Chiefs ended up, if Pacheco got hurt or something like that, the Rams aren't probably going anywhere, but I think Foreman's better than anybody that they rolled out today. Dr. Foreman, a guy who came back from an injury that pretty much nobody ever comes back from. I'm just happy to see the guy playing some good football. It's a great story.
If there was ever a signal that this podcast has come to a close, it's a Justin Forsett reference in the year 2023. Shout out, Scott. I did not see that one coming.
I'm here. I'm here for the people, my man.
All right. Well, hey, hell of an episode, buddy. Appreciate it as always. Man, just an interesting couple of Sundays back to back here. So hopefully we are doing our best to try to figure it out for you all, the people. As I mentioned, that's going to do it for us today, but be sure to tune in on Tuesday where Andy and I go through the post week 7 version of the People's Panic Meter. Reminder, send your emails to fantasymailbag@yahoosports.com. We got some panic. I know it's out there. Let's hear it. I was disappointed in the submissions last week. Let's really bring it this week, okay? I want to hear some good ones. Really, really freak out in this. We'll also talk top waiver wire picks. So, until then, we're out.